What's up, guys? Welcome to the podcast where we can listen to trans and gender non-binary voices telling us their story in their voice, reminding us that each of us is not alone. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Not Alone, and we have with us the perennially favorite Gabrielle Claiborne. And Gabrielle's been on at least twice before, and we get to talk to her about her journey, about how she has she sort of was super successful in a previous life. Then she took the extremely difficult step of saying success is not happiness, and then tried to reimagine her life in a way that would make her intrinsically happy. We started talking about the price she has started paying for the price of happiness, if you will. And if I could actually retitle the podcast at some point, I might go with the price of happiness, because that is a continuing theme that comes up, which is sometimes you have success, you have everything you want, but it's not about those external facing things. It's not about, and I say this very heteronormatively, but it's not about the hot girls, and it's not about the $50 million in the bank. It's something else. So the last time we spoke, Gabrielle, we spoke a little bit about how you were starting to, you'd finally broken through the wall that prevented you from seeing your own happiness, and you'd seen those glimmers of sunlight, and you were starting to you were going to tell your daughter.
Right.
So start me out here. What happened? How did you tell her? What was the reaction?
Darshan, I could not have introduced this segment any better than what you just did. So thank you for that perfect lead in. You know, I've got 3 kids, and they're all in their 30s now. And when I was having these courageous conversations with them, they were in their early to mid 20s. And my youngest daughter was the very first family member that I came out, that I came out to. And, you know, it's ironic that it was her, because as she was growing up as her parent, she was always the one that got under my skin and the most, and she knew how to push my buttons, but for some reason we were very close, right? And I loved her with all my heart, and she loved me. And I feel like that because she was the youngest of the 3, she had an opportunity to be exposed to things that me coming out to her was going to land a little differently than the older 2. Okay. She had gay friends. She was in creative art, or musical art, and musical theater and that kind of thing. So, you know, she was a vocalist, she was a dancer, so very involved in the arts. And there were, you know, her fellow students in that space were some from the LGBTQ community. And so she had exposure to those individuals, and some were very close friends of hers. So, you know, as I was navigating my own journey of coming out, not only to the world, but to my family, specifically to my kids and my now ex-wife, and my parents, she was recognizing things that were developing in me. I started growing my hair out. I started losing weight. And she started seeing things that were just like, okay, this is a little different. I'm not expecting my parent, my dad, to show up like this, right? So she was actually a voice contestant in the early 2000s. And so we had an audition in Memphis that she was trying out for. So she and I took a road trip to Memphis from Atlanta, and she tried out for she had a voice audition there. And on the way back, she was saying, okay, I know that there's something going on with you. What is it? And I said, her name is Samantha. I said, Samantha, there's nothing going on with me. And she kept pressing and persisting. And I finally broke, Darshan. I finally gave in to her persistence in asking the questions. I mean, she had caught me wearing stick-on fingernails because that was the only thing in those early years that I could do to align myself on the outside with how I felt on the inside. And so she saw things like that. And when I finally disclosed to her my true self, I was in tears. She was in tears. And she said, you know that I will not love you any less than I've always loved you. In fact, I'm sure that there are aspects of your true self that I would like even more. So I was like very pleased and just touched that she didn't push back on me. And she didn't push back and say, I can't deal with this and that kind of thing, but very open. And that began our journey of changing and embracing this new form of our relationship. I'll never forget the first time. And by the way, that trip that we took to Memphis was in my male persona. So this was before I fully transitioned. But, when we got back and we made the decision and commitment to go out, and she was going to meet Gabrielle, I'll never forget the first time she met Gabrielle. We were meeting in a Home Depot parking lot. And when I got out of the car and she looked at me and she says, dang, you are gorgeous. So I'm like, when the first words that came out of my youngest daughter's mouth when she met my true self were very authenticating and validating for me, and that was the beginning of our journey. We spent a lot of time getting to know each other, at me as my authentic self, and spending time. The reality is that even though she was accepting of me, there was a part of this journey that she had to grieve. And she had to grieve losing the person that she thought she knew as her parent, as her dad, And subsequently, there have been a number of difficult conversations that we've had along the way, like, how do we celebrate Father's Day now? How does that look for you? When I get married, who's walking me down the aisle? Those kind of things, right? So this has been just as much her journey as it has been mine. But I will tell you one that, 13 years later, I really feel like we are tighter than ever. I mean, we do everything together. She has confirmed and affirmed to me that I'm going to be invited to her wedding. She wants me to be in the delivery room when she delivers her first child. So knowing that she's welcoming me and embracing me into her world just, is life-giving for me.
So I have so many questions about that first moment where you were telling her. So my first question is, first of all, did she make it onto The Voice, or was it just at the?
She did not.
She did not. Okay. Was she ever tell us?
But ironically enough, she is a vocal coach now.
Is she? Really?
Yes.
Fair enough. My next question is, whenever I'm dating myself, but when I saw The Voice, they always had like a huge family waiting in the waiting room, listening to them sing. You described this journey as you and her.
Right.
Did other family meet you there or not quite?
No, it was just the two of us.
Okay. So you were cheering, they were taking pictures of you as you were doing this, but the end result was she didn't make it, but the fact was that you were her cheerleader, if you will.
I was.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So my next question is, okay, so we've gotten through this. She is asking questions. Other interviews I've done have sort of suggested that you reach this breaking point. You reach this point where you go, I don't know. I don't care what price I have to pay. You're so incredibly lonely that other people rejecting you is almost a price you're willing to pay just to be yourself. And then to see this ray of sunshine, to see Samantha say, I love you mom or dad or whatever she calls you now. But
Yes. Gabrielle.
she calls you Gabrielle. Easy enough.
Yes.
Okay. But how you describe, you sort of jumped through that moment, that sliver in time where you said, I was crying, she was crying as I told her. And she said that I won't love you any less. I might even love you more for who you actually are. Talk to me about that moment. That moment sort of that split second before you told her and the split second after. I have to imagine the split second before is, I'm going to tell you and I don't know what I'm about to lose.
Yes.
But talk to me about that loneliness you felt at that moment.
Well, I was at a precipice. I was at the precipice of losing her, but also at the precipice of finally allowing this load to come off of my shoulders, right?
Yeah.
I've always said, when my family knows about me, it doesn't matter who knows at that point.
Right.
My family knowing my true self was really very important to me. And I wanted to handle this the best way I could, right? And again, Darshan, there's not a roadmap for us to understand how to take those steps, right? And so it was like this apprehension of, I'm about to lose my daughter, or I'm about to finally let go of something that I've been hiding all my life.
Right.
All of those emotions, all wrapped up into, that one moment. It's like, how do you navigate that? How do you do that in a way that you're not just ugly crying, which I was, but being integrity with yourself, but also honoring the other person, what they're about to get, what information they're about to get laid on, and how are they going to process this information? I mean, do they even have a concept of what this looks like? Right.
Right.
I mean, here's the thing. I had the opportunity to grapple with this for almost 40 years. And then all of a sudden on a 3-hour or 4-hour drive home, I'm laying all this on my daughter and I'm putting 40 years on her.
Yeah.
It's the struggles that I experienced of, it's almost like a snap. It's like 40 years in a snapshot. And how is that person going to process this information? How are they going to receive it? How are they going to work through it? What is it going to look like after they work through it? Am I going to be a part of it after they work through it? There all these questions, all these emotions are swirling around in you.
You said a really important thing that I sort of glanced over, but I want to come back to it, where you said, you talked about how you put that load on the other person, and how are they going to process all of that? What my question for you is, it's not just another person, it's your daughter. It's right. So at that point, as a father, how much, I have to imagine, again, I'm not a parent, but I have to imagine you are incredibly protective and you want to save your daughter from anything that the world's going to throw at them. You want them to be independent, but the fact is that you will throw yourself in front of a grenade so that she is safe. Yes. And in your head, you feel like you are the one throwing the grenade. Yeah. And yet you have to. So what was that parent reaction for you? Like, how do you throw the grenade and throw yourself in front of it at the same time?
Well, I think, Darshan, it was like I got to the place where I had to trust that how I had raised her had positioned her for this, had prepared her for this. And it was a moment of me being vulnerable with her. And there have been moments before this conversation, before this courageous conversations, that we were vulnerable and courageous with each other. I mean, there have been moments together as a parent and a child where I have fought tooth and nail for her. There's been moments where I have had to back up and allow her to grow her own wings and fight for herself, because I'm not going to always be there.
Yeah.
And so it's balancing that dynamic,
Yeah.
of being able to be the loving, protecting parent, but also show some vulnerability to your child and say, now it's my turn to be vulnerable with you, right?
Yeah.
And hope that she's going to reciprocate in a way that she has learned over the course of the time that we've spent together long before that.
I think a amazing part of this story that I didn't know until you started talking today was you and she had such a contentious relationship right until this point, which I think is, whether you believe in God or not, like a wonderful moment from a pure religious standpoint, like just God laughing at you, going,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is where you start.
It's almost like, are you, here's the thing. It's like, are you really going to do this with this person?
So how much, so she obviously first comforted you and told you, I might love you more.
Right.
I have to ask, how much grief did she give you about it afterwards?
Well, this is the kind of grief I get from her.
Okay.
She says, okay, yes, Gabrielle, you can come to my wedding, but you can't look better than me. So it's that kind of grief that she plays with me. It's like, and I'll never forget, as I moved through my journey and got more involved in the work that I do and built the support system that I now have, I started pulling her into my chosen family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden she's like, dang, this is freaking amazing right here. I didn't even know how prominent you were in the community. I didn't know how much people respected you, but I'm like, I just need to stick close to you, let some of that rub off on me. And so, it's just that kind of dynamic that kind of, we go back and forth. I mean, Darshan, she's the kind of person that's bigger than life. I mean, she is the life of the party. She is an extrovert. She's outgoing. So, anytime that we're together, we don't do anything small. It's grand. It's out loud. It's fun. It's, quite honestly, it's magnetic, and it pulls folks into that, whatever's going on. And so she's just always been that kind of kid, and I think that's the kind of grief that she gives us. We kind of play with each other,
Yeah. Has she, you described her being part of musical theater, and you described her as having gay friends. Is she queer in any way?
No.
So she sort of was able to see outside her own experience.
Yeah. And again, I think, Darshan, that those friendships that she had with her friends at school kind of opened her world up to something other than her lens.
Yeah.
It showed her the challenges that they faced, the bullying that they faced, in the world, in school. And I can tell you that, there have been moments when she and I have been out, like at a restaurant or out, doing things, and she watches people's reaction to me. And she sees that, right? And because she has gone through her own journey of challenges in her own life, I really feel like that she has this deep empathy for people who have had to navigate difficult situations, difficult seasons in their life to get on the other side of those seasons, right? And so when when someone goes through that themselves, they have appreciation and a respect of someone else who is navigating something similar.
Yeah. Okay, so you guys were doing a 3-hour car ride.
Yep.
You drove home. Now there are 2 people in the family who know this huge secret.
Yes.
What happens now?
And well, I told her, I said, do not tell anybody because I want to be the one to share this information. And she said, that's fine. And just so happens during this time, she was working kind of part-time at a restaurant as a waitress at a restaurant in North Atlanta. And she and her mom and I, or her mom and I, got together for lunch one day. And, this was still, I was presenting in my male persona. And so we went to her restaurant because we kind of wanted to see her. And so she welcomed us at the door. She sat us down at the table. She came over to the table and she says, have you told her yet? This is my daughter. Okay. This is what she does. She puts me in these situations where I'm like, I have nowhere to turn or no place to run. Right. And my ex-wife looked at me and she says, tell me what? And I said, I'll tell you. I'll tell you after we had, lunch. So we get through lunch and we go out to the car, and that's when I proceed to come out to my wife. And needless to say, it's devastated her. I mean, she lost it. She said, immediately she went to the place of, our marriage is a lie. What you told me all those years ago that you would love me until the end of time was not true. All of what we have built, this family, where we are in our life together, it's all been a lie. And it's because of all of this. How dare you do this to me? And immediately, she was struggling with betrayal, hurt, anger. I mean, all of those emotions. And, I kind of told her, I said, look, and this was very early in my journey. I said, look, I'm still navigating the early stages of this. I don't even really know what this looks like for me yet. Okay. So give me, if you can, extend me a little grace as I understand kind of what this looks like as I continue moving forward. And I no longer want to hide from you, this aspect of myself, because I can't do it and be in integrity with myself. And that was the beginning of a very difficult journey with my now ex-wife. I'm glad to say 13 years later, I was just on the phone with her night before last. We are amazing friends, but we had to get through a lot of difficult conversations. There have been moments where I have got scathing texts, scathing voicemail. I mean, just horrendous voicemails from her asking why, judging me and kind of condemning me for, accepting this aspect of my truth. And I know why she's done that. It's not because she hated me or anything like that. It's just that she had to work through her own grieving. She had to work through her own emotions. She had to work through understanding that what we had pre-transition was a wonderful experience, a wonderful life. We have 3 great kids from it, right? She had a very successful career. I had a very successful career. We were living in an affluent part of Atlanta, where she still lives, by the way. And so understanding that that was a season that was, enjoyable and meaningful and beneficial for both of us, but that season was now coming to an end or a transition into a new season. And that's kind of what we've had to navigate.
It's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast was to talk about the contrasts, to talk about those moments with Samantha, which are so filled with joy,
Yes.
and to talk about the more difficult conversations that you have, both incredibly meaningful, both incredibly difficult for various different reasons.
Yeah.
What I find very fascinating is, um, with Samantha, there was you jumped off that precipice, and she was there to catch you.
Yes.
And with all due respect to Samantha, obviously, she had less to lose
Yes.
compared to your wife, your ex-wife, who saw her own life crumble as you told her the reality of who you are. Did you find yourself becoming more patient simply because you were unloading 40 years, as you put it, onto your partner? Like, as an individual, do you just kind of go, look, I have to be myself, but I also have to give grace for the type of information I'm sharing? Or do you find yourself just being who you are and that's consistent?
Well, I had to learn the grace piece. Okay.
Okay.
And I don't say that flippantly, because this it's hard. It's hard because I had to learn that there was a difference between self-honoring and being selfish.
Mm,
I was accused of being selfish. You know, how dare you do this to your wife? How dare you do this to your parents? How dare you do this to your kids? You know, I got that all the time. And so when you're getting that kind of feedback, when you're getting that kind of rejection and pushback, it quite honestly, it says it forces a person to say, to reevaluate things. You know,
yeah.
is this really me? Is this really worth it? Right? How can I navigate this? How can I navigate through this in a way that I can be self honoring to myself, but extending grace and holding space for others as they're traveling their own journey with my journey? And that's been a difficult learning experience. I remember, there were times when I would get these texts or voicemails from my ex, and I now at this point in my journey had a best friend, and I would, all hours of the night, I would call her, I would text her, and she says, do not read that text, do not listen to that voicemail, because if you do, you're just going to set yourself up for more disappointment and for more hurt. Allow me to do that, and I will share with you if it's something you need to know. And so I developed that relationship with my best friend for that support, right? And that's very important when you're going through things like this, because this is not a journey to be traveled alone, Darshan. And I learned that along the way. Yes, I learned to extend grace, and yes, I now encourage folks that I coach and speak with that are beginning their journeys and they have a similar dynamic that I had. To You have to understand that this is not just your journey; it's their journey as well, and you have to learn to be able to separate yourself from that energy that you're getting from them, honor it, allow it to happen, but love yourself no less, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had to learn to do that, and that's just been part of the journey. And I think, to be honest with you, this is not just unique to my journey. I think anytime we take a journey, we step into our most authentic self, our certain aspects of our authentic journey are going to overflow into other people's lives, and we have to recognize that and honor that. They may get on board, or they may not, or they may be somewhere in between that, right? And
Yeah.
that's the reality of how this thing works. I mean, when folks come to me and ask for support and advice, I can't tell them that it's going to get better. I just can't tell them. I can give them hope that if they do things in the way that I now know would have been a better way for me to navigate this journey, then they're going to set themselves up for greater success. But what that success looks like at the end of the day doesn't necessarily depend only on them. It's also a function of how that other person or that family member processes it in their own lens.
So we've dealt with two conversations, one with Samantha, one with your ex-wife. I'm obviously very curious about how your other two children dealt with it and how your parents dealt with it. But we're at the 30-minute mark, which is, as usual, we just have such a great time talking to each other. So,
Yeah.
I have a great time talking to you. I have no idea if you have a good time talking to me.
And it's mutual.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. But I hope you'll consider coming back so we can continue this conversation.
We're not done.
We're not done. There's some amazing conversations to be had, and I hope that if people land up seeing this, if we're lucky, and people they find the strength, because I feel like a lot of the previous conversations you and I have had have been sort of setting the stage for the conversation we had today, because I felt like we discussed vulnerability, we discussed strength, we discussed pushback and grace. I mean, I think those are some really great topics to bring together for a conversation. So, but I feel like those aren't the only emotions, or even close to the only emotions that.
No.
So let's keep the conversation going. Before we go, Gabrielle, do you want to tell people how they can reach you and some of the amazing things you're doing?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also, you can find me at www.transformationjourneysww.com. That is our website. So feel free to reach out to that website and contact us, and we'll get back with you.
And Gabrielle, what would they be reaching out to you for? What services do you offer?
Well, I do a lot of keynote speaking around vulnerability and authenticity. I also have a book, Embrace Your Truth, The Journey of Authenticity, which is a memoir meets self-help. It is not only for my community, but it's for any individual who is looking to embrace an aspect of their authenticity to a greater degree.
Awesome. Gabrielle, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you, Darshan.